Please welcome co-founder and group CEO of MakeMyTrip, Rajesh Magow, in conversation with Skift Asia editor Peden Bhutia.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for making it on time. I'm still getting messages that people are an hour and a half late. I think there's a traffic jam in Delhi, and I hope we are the one causing it. Rajesh, thank you very much. Welcome to the Skift stage for a second time. Rajesh, in the last few earnings calls, I hear a lot about this concept of a connected trip that you've been talking about. So it's central to MakeMyTrip's transition into a travel super app, right? But whenever you are doing these one-stop travel solutions, execution is a recurring challenge, right? Because in these large digital ecosystems. So what are some of the execution challenges that you are facing or have faced, and how are you working to address them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And good morning, everyone. It's good to be back here. So let's talk about this, right? So, and first, the easier part. The easier part for us was there was a strategic decision flowing from the vision that we've been following, which is that we want to be a preferred platform for port of call for all the travel products and services in India, right? For Indian travelers. So that was the easier part. So it wasn't like a difficult decision for us to take. But like you rightly pointed out, the challenging part in this is how do we execute it, how do we crack it? But it does not really changed or sort of pushed us to change that decision because it was going to be hard on execution. And there, I think at the very core of it is driven from the consumer insights. Yes, the challenging parts is revolves around consumer behavior, to be honest, because if you really go deeper and analyze the consumer behavior or buying behavior for travel services in India, or I would probably expand it to say emerging markets, it's very different from an evolved Western world market. Let me give you a few examples on that, and from there, you start thinking about what could be the challenges, right? So in India, contrary to maybe a lot of people would intuitively think, not many people would end up buying, firstly, a particular product in one session. There are multiple trips that they would make it to the platform, shop around, and then they'll come and do their booking. And more importantly, let's say if the trip involves multiple products and services, because you will have a transport service, you will have ancillary products, you will have eco services, eco product, and different types of ecos that you might want to, because now the market is emerging to a lot of the homestay sort of property types as well. You would not necessarily, even for your own specific, one particular trip, you would not buy that in one go, right? So it was not. So from a connected trip standpoint, it is very important for us to understand that behavior first, and then how do you provide the solution, right? So if we end up doing it in a traditional, conventional way of doing cross-sell every single time on the thank you page and say, okay, can you just buy this particular one or buy that particular one? It's not going to work. It doesn't really work in, I would say 100% of the times, but predominantly. And therefore, how do you make sure that you end up sort of, getting that customer back and, provide a personalized, relevant experience for you to be able to cross-sell, upsell, or provide a particular different service, which is needed, by the way, which is needed by the customer at some point in time, but it's just the timing difference, right? So how do you do that? So, how do you stitch it together? Because it's easier for you to stitch it together if you talk to the product guys. They would tell you that it is easier for you to stitch it together in one session, but it's really hard for you to stitch it together when it is sort of broken, right? So that is just one example of sort of product side challenge or consumer journey side of challenge.
Rajesh, but how is that different from, what your neighborhood travel agent does, stitching off packages? Because that's what travel agents are doing, they give you an end-to-end experience through packages. So how is that different from that?
Yeah, interesting, but very different. And let me just explain it to you why. So what I was trying to explain was the online buying behavior, that you end up just buying different products for your particular trip at different times. You are not necessarily looking to buy a customized package. There is a customer segment who ends up, and we have a packages product on our platform as well, that who would want to be handheld from the word go for the entire trip. That is a completely different segment of customer, because maybe new user, new destination, I'm less comfortable, I'm not necessarily as online savvy as I would like it to be. But the other online crowd is buying a la carte. It's just a question of at what time do I need to buy. I mean, it's just the perception is that, okay, let me just book the flight first. I'll come to the hotel closer to the date of travel. And by the way, this is despite the fact that India is a very last minute market. I don't think we plan, I mean, if you start comparing with consumer buying behavior or planning behavior with Europe, we would be like literally last minute, because, advanced purchase or advanced planning time for us here in Indian consumers or by Indian consumers is just 7 days, 15 days, except there is a, sort of a high season, and then you might end up with a very small percentage would end up doing it in maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks in advance. So but it's an a la carte buying behavior, right? So you have to just make sure that you follow the journey, and not necessarily only on the online channel, but off the platform also. So if you follow the customer and on WhatsApp, following your CLM journey, how relevant, personalized your CLM journey is. So that's one part of it, right? Just how do you stitch together the consumer flow for you to be able to just get the best out of it, right? And for the whoever you would ask, even with the global level, the single transaction attach rate will be abysmally low. But if you start looking at the wallet share over a period of time, it will be higher. But the other challenge is also, by the way, which gets actually grossly underestimated in my view in the marketplace model, is the supply side and the content side.
Correct.
Right? Because, for every little category or a service, pick up, let's say, we recently invested in intercity cab use case, right? It's a fragmented market. And when you have to just provide high quality, on one platform, it's a world matured product. On, any of the other services that you've been servicing for many years, but you get into a new service and then, you have to have that sort of benchmark, right? Because you're just one platform, one-stop shop, as you rightly pointed out. And how do I get to that position in an accelerated, fast-track fashion is the challenge. Because now I've established my customer experience benchmark on a platform, and I need to come to that speed. It can't be that 10 years long journey for me to be able to provide the same quality of service, because guess what? On the other product, the quality of service or the experience that I'm providing is far more evolved and matured.
Correct.
Right? So how do you actually do that? And especially in a fragmented market. So you have to do a lot of heavy lifting on that front as well. But the most important part in this whole thing is, just more again from strategic standpoint, that while execution could be a challenge, but then if you crack it, it becomes a moat as well, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you look at in an online, any business marketplace business model, the biggest cost for you is the cost of customer acquisition, right? So if I've acquired the customer for providing one service, if I'm not able to, after making the right kind of investments to sell more travel-related services, we are not going beyond travel.
Exactly.
And
so your acquisitions also, yeah. Book My Forex, Savari, Happy. So, of course, your acquisitions also show that you're trying to move beyond flights and hotels.
Pretty much every travel service. Again, it flows from the same theme that we have. And we say, okay, because I have the customer, he's already, sort of liking a particular product or services that we've been selling over the year. And, it started with flights, it is hotels, the homestays, the ground transport. Our Red Bus platform is doing a phenomenal job on the bus ticketing platform. Now, infrastructure has improved in the country. Why not look at even the intercity cab, right? And then the ancillary products, like you rightly pointed out, which is, Forex or insurance we've been selling, maybe even the, consumer lending products through our Trip Money platform. So basically just make sure that you follow this vision to the T and do a good job on both supply side and the experience side, and keep improving it, keep just
Correct.
enhancing it. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Rajesh, when you see that, you're putting all this together
Yes.
for one consumer, and that's the Indian traveler,
Yes.
right, for now.
Yeah.
And so, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the Indian traveler,
Right.
because a few years ago, there was this term called China ready. Everybody wanted to be China ready. Now, the destinations want a slice of the Indian traveler, right? And I see tourism boards here. I see Raki from Russell Khaimah is here. I see Emma is there from Abu Dhabi. I see the Singapore Tourism Board. So if you have to talk about how do you cater to the Indian traveler, because there's been a shift from acquiring material possessions to seeking immersive experiences,
Yeah.
right? And so how has that changed the Indian traveler, and how can destinations and travel companies cater to that?
Oh, I think it's a great question again. I think at the core of it, I would say just more from a broader economy standpoint, it's just the evolution of the country, which is that the economy is doing well, which effectively means the incomes are rising, disposable income you have more, and therefore you can just afford to have sort of more buying power in your hand, and therefore just sort of going towards experiences. And I think COVID also contributed very, very positively towards this. Some part of it is just very fundamental evolution of the country, and the other part of it is also just the buying behavior, just the desire changing from
the rising middle class as well.
Rising middle class, right? So the rising middle class, upper middle class, even the higher middle class and the premium segment, if you will, right? So that is at the core of it, right? Really, really fundamental. And I don't think we should forget that, and this sizable population that has really reached there. And a lot of people end up actually making a mistake, since you mentioned China. We are a very, very large population country, but I don't think the focus has to be 1.4 billion. The focus has to be more 350, 400 million people, right? In terms of just
And the ones who have access to passports as well.
Exactly. And, especially in the context of the topic that we are talking about, right? The discretionary spend, right? Not necessarily the essentials, because, the grocery, the market could be 1.4 billion for all I care. So when you look at that, it's a very sizable population, right? And it is improving. Now there, what has happened is that, and this is like when we look at the data, and it's a sizable data that we see it on our platform, just to give you a couple of tips, right? And I think it was getting flashed at the background as well. If you look at frequent travelers on our behavior on our platform, about 45% of them used to do, let's say, 2 trips, now doing 3 trips. And about 50% of them, again, there's a certain sizable percentage of that, of the frequent travelers, used to do 5 trips, are now doing 6.7 trips.
How do you count the 0.7?
Yeah, that is just mathematics, by the way. That's just average, right? So, and average comes into fraction as well, right? So that is what it is, but round it off to say 7. I mean, just to make the point, right? So clearly the trend is showing. That is one. And then you see the trend of, we talked about rising middle class. I am looking for more experience. I'm exploring more options. I am ready to go offbeat location. I am ready to, in the international context, since all the tourism boards are here, everybody is eyeing at this population and rising middle class and more disposable income at your hand, looking for better experience and exploring other countries as well. So in many ways today, what we believe, post-COVID, the entire, given that the size of our country, and we have a lot to offer in terms of experience, in terms of destinations, etc. But for certain cohorts of customers, the Goas of this world in India would be competing with other destinations, other beach destinations, which is like 5 or 6 hour flying distance as well. So you have a flying distance which is 2 hour, maximum 2.5 hours in India. Mm-hmm. Let's say motorable distance, maybe 3 hours. At a stretch, I will do even great highways these days, 4 hours, 5 hours journey as well. But I am suddenly then competing with 5 or 6 hour flying distance, not necessarily long haul, because that's a completely different cohort as well. So that is where the Southeast Asia, the Middle East market, the certain parts of Europe become very, very important. And, and Campbell was here. I don't know whether he spoke about it as we were sitting in the back room, but a lot of the expansion, coming in from, I know Peter is here in the afternoon and he will tell you, the international expansion is focused on this 5-hour, 6-hour flying distance, right? So I think it's just the evolution of the customer buying behavior, one, and more income in your pocket, and desire to just be more sort of exploratory in nature is driving all of this.
Also, Rajesh, now that we are talking about the fact that the Indian traveler is a coveted lot, now whenever there is there is also competition, right? So, of course, you are not just competing with global OTAs, but now there is also a competition that you face of direct bookings versus OTAs, right? So, airlines are doing that, and the last few Yatra calls have been more about Indigo than about Yatra, because they've been talking about how Indigo is doing direct selling. So how do you travel that? How are you working around that?
No, I think it's a good observation as well. But if you really see, and I know you do, look at other markets and how they have also evolved. And I'm not necessarily saying travel category and let's say flights or hotels or any other, let's say even the attractions and the activities, etc. And even go beyond travel. You would realize that where the size of the market is huge, it is never that one channel will be able to fulfill the entire demand. It will never be the case. Pick up any example. At least I have seen across categories, it will never be the case. So therefore, the way we see it, we don't see it as a competition, to be honest. Because at the end of the day, we are selling all the products of all the partners at the end of the day on our platform. And the way I see is that we have a role to play as an intermediary, and they on their own, and and a lot of the global chains, for example, have always been trying to sell direct, and and why not? As long as the economics work out for them. But will the direct channel be alone, or the OTA channel alone be able to fulfill the entire demand? Absolutely not, because guess what? Overall occupancy for hotels today is still about 60. Right, so we still have 30-40% theoretical headroom there, right? So and then it's also a question of focus, like for any principal partner, the core business will be also to focus on how do I run the airline better from a service experience standpoint and so on, and distribution happens to be one other thing to do. While from our point of view that, our bread and butter is the distribution. So I don't think it needs to be necessarily viewed as competing with each other. It is complementing each other. As long as of course, when you want to build it and you will go a little aggressive on pricing, etc., it's okay. All of that settles down eventually. But at the end of the day...
But Rajesh, are you saying that now because they are not aggressive enough? Because if anybody is taking business away from you, then that would be competition. Because right now, maybe it's not as aggressive, but once they become like really aggressive, will you see them as competition?
No, I don't think so. I'll tell you why, and I'm not saying that, just to be diplomatically correct, to be honest. When you see this in the context of the full pie that is available in the market, absolutely not. And today, let's say even for domestic flights, which is the matured product, most matured product that we have, our market share is about 30%, online, offline put together. And the online penetration is about 65%, right? There is still offline, sale happening in various forms. You talked about packages. A lot of the customers still want to have a bespoke, customized, handheld kind of bookings, and we are selling them as well, right? So I don't think it needs to be. When you see in the context of the size of the pie, it would start making sense.
So, you've talked about the travel super app and bringing it all together. Rajesh, recently the Booking.com CFO said that AI chatbots will not replace OTAs. So is that a fear that's playing in your mind? And of course, I know you have Myra, and you've developed Myra to handle travel queries as well. So, if you do not fear AI, what is the next big frontier in AI that you think will be? And how will MakeMyTrip kind of leverage it?
I actually missed that comment. I hadn't really seen that comment, but let me just share with you and the audience our take on it. I actually don't see it like that again. Whether it'll replace, not replace, etc. Time will tell. We'll see, right? I would rather actually see it more the way we have seen it in the past. That it is, we are at the core of it again, a tech business, right? So we have to just keep looking at what is the new set of technology that is available out there. And in the recent past, there was metaverse, there was blockchain, etc. as well, right? And then see what is that we can do. Two things. What is that we can do to leverage that? And can we do it and see that ahead of anyone else, right? Just more from a market leadership standpoint. And then I actually think, given the rich data that we have over the years, because at the end of the day, any technology layer will not be able to do an as good job unless you actually, have rich data underneath it, right? And do a good job of managing that data, right? And keep sort of making it more and more richer and so on. So I think maybe that is what he was alluding to. That OTAs might be, or many other platforms who have over the years have been providing these services, have deeper consumer insights, have done a great job on the supply side, especially in the fragmented market, have huge amount of rich content. Will they be in better position to be able to leverage this technology and provide a personalized and the relevant experience? Because at the end of the day, that's what we are looking at. What is that AI would do at the end of the day from a consumer lens standpoint? Consumer lens standpoint, forget about the productivity, sort of gains that you would end up getting from this technology. But from a consumer lens standpoint, all what consumers are looking for, can it be a more relevant, convenient, personalized experience, right? And who do you think be in better position to be able to do it? Anyone who has rich data, anyone who's, not in denial mode, ready to embrace the technology. Anyone who is investing behind the new technology. Look what happened, recent past example, not a long time ago, when the internet access device changed, suddenly from big screen desktop to a small screen mobile phones. What happened? At the end of the day, it was to do with technology, it was device related. And for you to change the mindset of your engineering team and UI team and design team, etc., was a Herculean task. Right? And again, the intermediaries, all the e-commerce players were able to sort of quickly adapt to it, invest behind it, and that is how they sort of stayed ahead in the curve. And similarly, I see this, and it's a transformational, it's really real, as against maybe in comparison, blockchain or metaverse for that matter. And therefore, we just need to embrace, focus on what it can do. And with that intention, we've been on this journey for last about a year or so.
So MakeMyTrip does not fear AI. It's working with AI, right?
We are paranoid, but not necessarily because it'll disrupt. Okay. We are paranoid because we want to stay ahead and leverage this. Yeah.
You want to get a hold of AI and you want to understand.
Yeah.
Rajesh, I have a lot of questions, but I see that the audience also has a lot of questions, and you can ask questions on the app and the Slido through Slido. One question Kiran has asked is about what products will be available for customers in Go MMT's Super Travel app. So they already think that you are coming up with the Super Travel app. So what products will be available?
Well, the 2 or 3 that are in the pipeline, they're coming. In fact, we've done a soft launch, and we used to have it pre-COVID, but got disrupted. It's going to be attractions, the experiences, the activities funnel, which will effectively be in-destination experience. You can book a la carte, you can attach it, in the context of connected trip, etc. Then we are also looking to have cruises come on the platform as well. And as I mentioned, we have a...
And India is a huge cruise market, right?
India is a very interesting cruise market for a particular customer segment. And I think it's a great experience, but I don't think the awareness of what cruise product can offer per se is very high.
Because I think essentially cruise was looked at upon something that people do after retirement.
Yeah, but and people who would have gone and done the cruise trip would completely say the opposite, right? So, because it's a lot of fun and it's captive and it's a great experience, the way I see it. But I think we can do a lot more in terms of creating experience, creating awareness rather. In that product. And then we have a job or two in hand for scaling up some of the recent investments that we've made, right? You mentioned about Forex. We have to, again, in the context of, providing that service and doing a good job of that and having like a comprehensive sort of one-stop shop. We still need to do a better job at that. We still need to do a better job. We just started on our intercity cab use case. To be honest, for our retail customer, the plate is really full.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. I think I did not even realize that our time is up. Thank you so much for this conversation. I have many more questions, but we'll do that offline now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.